For the weekday readings, I don't think it's by design, but there is the one word that ties both of them together. It's foolishness. I think in the gospel it's obvious how. The first reading, though, from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, I find that a little more compelling. I remember when I kind of first really listened or reflected on these lines. The foolishness of God is wider than human wisdom, wiser than human wisdom. The weakness of God is stronger than wisdom. The foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. I think it's something that is far too often we fail to appreciate that. For people of faith, I think it's easier. It's the world to whom, as Paul says, we are called to evangelize. It takes a little more doing. I don't know if you've heard, it's making the international news, but in the Philippines we have this no-nonsense president. He's been in office coming up on 2 months now. And at the latest count, I think more than 1,000 people have been, well, we'll call them victims of what we call extrajudicial killings. Summarily killed without due process on the understanding that they're part of the drug business. Mostly pushers, street dealers, and then of course there are what we call the drug lords that somehow have not yet been touched. Some say a lot of them have left the country. But there is some concern. Two groups in particular, the Catholic Church, especially through the voice of the bishops, and what we call the Human Rights Commission in the Philippines, which was established by the government, to kind of look into what's happening and say, people have rights. The human being is worth something. You don't just summarily kill people. And my fear is not just the government, certainly not just the president, but a lot of people are kind of saying, but the result is good, and are even calling to just abolish the Human Rights Commission, which is not too far from saying just ignore the church. Now, I don't think the church is going to fold up in the Philippines anytime soon. People will still come to church because they, after all, receive the sacraments. But there is a disconnect between what we receive from the Word of God and how we live our lives. We like what we receive, but what it calls us to do, sometimes we're not as open. And I wonder how much of that is therefore, the challenge of Paul saying, we will have to show people that the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. Sometimes I fear we'd rather listen to ourselves than listen to God. At least if we see the good results that our thinking comes up with, we feel fine with that. We fail to recognize the heart of Paul's teaching, the value of the cross. Christianity is not just about resurrection. Christ died so that he might be raised to new life. And if we want to embrace that life, we will have to face the cross as well. Those difficult parts of human living that we will have to deal with. Recognizing that easy fixes are not fixes at all. Of late, one of the things that I started to think is, when we don't value human life in the womb, we don't value human life outside the womb. Extrajudicial killings are just well accepted because people have, over time, failed to value human life. We don't want to suffer with everybody. We don't want to face the difficult task of finding out what is the root cause of things that are happening in our communities, in our society. We don't want to accept the fact that perhaps our wisdom really is not as wise as that of our God. You and I, this is not news to us, it's probably not a challenge. The challenge to us is to convince people that human wisdom really is nothing compared to that of the Lord's. That is where our lives are. We need to continue to witness to the gospel. That the people see in us that even though we try to deal with the challenges of life in manners that perhaps are not too easy, we nevertheless find peace and a measure of joy and happiness in the lives that we live. The world is just looking for easy fixes. We cannot afford to just kind of give into that. We have to teach the world that the cross is the way to true freedom and happiness.